This episode of Bonfireside Chat is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, specifically Randy. Thank you, Randy. Also by the charity event we're doing the weekend of July 28th to raise money for Jala Prendez, one of the hosts of the levels, or the level. And she's hosting on other levels other than the main one. She should probably let us know. But just the level podcast to raise money for her medical care. Check out our website. Go to Duckfeed.tv to check that out. And please tune in and donate if you can. Thanks.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm Randy Walker.
And this is Bonfireside Chat After Dark. An After Dark favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. And this time we are kind of reading your responses to Dark Souls 2 on the whole, and then doing a whole gaggle of kind of random questions and some just funnin'. These are a good time, and these questions are, or I guess responses, are provided by our Patreon backers. So thank you, everybody who has given in the past.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks, Randy, for sticking around.
Yes,
no problem. This is great.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
This is gonna be fun. Yeah, so it's gonna be fun. Yeah, and go back to the last episode if you haven't listened to it. It is it's a good time. I think it was exhaustive. An exhaustive kind of rundown of Dark Souls 2.
Yes.
In the best way.
Oh, yeah. I'll go ahead and get us started here. And I'm going to go ahead and get us started here with Zane Rutherford, who says, Dark Souls 2 remains my favorite game in the series. No individual part is the best, looking at lore, characters, gameplay, etc., but I think it scores high on almost all of those. Perhaps the best part is the ability to control your experience. A variety of builds are effective. You can fine-tune the difficulty to an amazing degree, and best of all of the worst encounters are optional ones. Plus, there's just more game. Souls is a series which sinks its claws in early and keeps players coming back. And as epic as the lore of Dark Souls 1 was, the first couple times I played, that aspect of the game fades, leaving behind a level of clunkiness that I found hard to get back into. Dark Souls 2 has the best replayability because of its versatility, and in a series where the best moments are the ones you make yourself, Dark Souls 2 gave me the most by far. Thanks for being thorough and entertaining companions. Umbasa. P.S. My only complaint, there's no patches.
They gave patches the Manus treatment. They took them and they broke them up into two characters.
Yeah. That's weird.
Cratches? Creighton patches?
Yep, Cratches.
Cratches, yes.
Yeah.
Bob Cratches.
Yeah. I agree with what you said, Zane. Like, yeah. It doesn't max out the score in any of those individual components, aside from like, versatility or variety. But yeah, it adds up to a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something in there that I want to specifically respond to is when you talk about how the lore aspects kind of fade. That reminds me similar to like when I was talking about Bloodborne the last episode. Like when you no longer have those narrative things kind of carrying you forward, the second half of Bloodborne kind of fades for me. And then that's when the mechanical like kind of ugliness rears its head. In just from my perspective, it reminds me of that, so there's a little bit of that in Dark Souls 1 as well, where like, if you no longer have that compelling reason to move forward story-wise to contextualize the play, you're just left with the play and it stands really bare. And one of the things about Dark Souls 2 is that just gets better. As you get through, the bosses, even the end game bosses, it's not like this huge difficulty spike like it is in Bloodborne, and your character avatar is at max. You've had plenty of time to max out adaptability, find weapons you like, get into a final build that's really like fully upgrade your stuff. Like your avatar strength is really high. Mm-hmm. So by the time, if that narrative reason stops kind of drawing you forward, which is arguable whether it does or not, the play is like, it's like peak play, so maybe the opening of Dark Souls 2 is not as strong when you're dealing with the low amount of Estus and low adaptability, but it gets stronger as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a definite curve.
Yeah.
And it's not exponential, it's logarithmic.
Right. It's a good way to put it. Andrew McNeil writes, "Hi guys. And then here in italics says, highest of high praise, which you will only edit out anyway, Cole. No, I wouldn't. We're doing these different. I'm leaving the praise in. So thank you. So Andrew continues, I had a weird trajectory with the Souls games over the years. I bought Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 2 all within about a week of release and didn't immediately beat any of them. I'd like to blame my university workload over this period for this, but the fact is, I just don't think I had the patience in me. I don't think I had the patience in me at the time. In fact, it was only after the release of Dark Souls 3 that I went back and beat Dark Souls 2. Since then, I've beaten the rest of the games, but have been unable to replicate that high of Dark Souls 2. I know that you are both DS2 boys, but I can't help but wonder if I've shot myself in the foot with my play order. The NPC quests are a hassle, but I really do love the spoke structure of the game, and it's the one game in the series that I've consistently replayed. No, Bloodborne, get back in the corner with your single playthrough where you belong. A friend of mine and I also occasionally run through the game, passing the controller on deaths, and use the downtime as an excuse to vent about work, life, etc. That sounds fun.
Yeah, that's cute.
Without too much exaggeration, I do think that DS2 has been one of the most important games for me personally to come out in the last 10 years, and it kind of sucks to see it so arbitrarily dismissed by some people. Do you guys think that if you shuffled up the order of your play at all, that you would have largely different views compared to those that you have now? Also, in a purely Duckfeed-centric way, your DS2 episodes were what introduced me to your podcast network as a whole. So it also has that going for it. And after BSC passes into the skeleton realm, I'll probably re-listen to those episodes to remember what the game was like pre-Scholar. Listening to you guys across all of your podcasts is probably a big reason why I get to have Doctor in front of my name these days. I'd have long since cracked without your soothing tones. If I ever become a Looking Glass Knight and need some minions, you'll be the first two on my list. All the best, Andrew.
Oh, thanks, Andrew.
You give us far too much credit for you becoming a doctor.
Yeah, I don't know, Cole. I think that we probably, from doing those tests for him and then the fact that we're licensed by the state to bequeath medical degrees, I think we had a small part in it.
Yeah, I just I like the idea that the state bestows the power for like random people to knight people as doctors.
Yeah, it's like a citizen's arrest, but positive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really any different from being a notary.
Ooh.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah. Yeah. And you can just kind of become a doctor. Like there are those online things. Like we should start offering doctorates. Let me make that a Patreon stretch goal. Yeah. You can be a reverend.
Just provide a JPEG of a diploma.
Yeah. Print yourself.
Yeah.
Like really, really low resolution too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like lots of artifacts.
Yeah. Stretch it out. It's obviously like a scanned diploma that we just wrote in our own stuff.
That's actually not a bad idea.
This is a pretty funny idea. So there's a couple different questions here that are kind of interesting. But one of them I want to throw to you, Randy, just first, because he says, if your play order had been different, do you think that would have affected your perspective? You haven't played Demon Souls.
Nope.
Have you gotten what else have you played in the series? Have you actually gotten through?
Oh, I finished Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, all the DLC and everything. Like everything after Dark Souls 2, I've completed to finished to completion.
Yeah.
So I would say that like if I were to go back to Demon Souls or Dark Souls now, which I do intend to at some point in my life, it's going to be a different experience than people who went that way first. But that's okay. That's the whole point of like life. So I would definitely never like regret that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's just your experience, and that's okay. And that should be a thing that's celebrated rather than like regretted or like a source of like embarrassment or shame or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did it? Do you feel like it affected your experience? Like moving through the, I guess you'll know more once you play through Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll be really curious to see what you think of Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 once you get there.
Okay. I will follow up.
Yeah. If it's before, we'll do a follow up on one of the After Dark things. If it's before the end of the show. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What about us, Cole? Like, what do you think if we had done things differently?
I can only think of ways that it would be worse.
Yeah.
Like if I had started on Bloodborne, it would be very difficult to go to the different pace, even back to, something like Dark Souls 3. I think that like it's in there, but it is different enough that would mess me up. And it kind of did, it's hard to go to and from that. Like the only time that we got out of order in our playthrough is both of us played Demon Souls after Dark Souls, but like, I don't think that diminished my enjoyment of Demon Souls. Playing Demon Souls first, like I it would have been nice to do that because I would have had more context for the connections and stuff between it. But I think that those are different enough in tone and in presentation that it doesn't really, to me, it didn't harm the experience by doing it the second way.
Yeah, I wonder if part of that is because Demon Souls is kind of a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
Than Dark Souls. Like they actually slowed down for Dark Souls.
Yeah.
In terms not just of pace, but also in in terms of actual movement speed.
Yes.
And stuff. So yeah, it's really tricky to say. I'm glad I didn't go through backwards.
Yeah.
Like I think that a lot of like the problems I have with some of the entries in the series would stay the same, but I would notice more.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're saying, like the pace would bother me, even though like I stand by my general perspective is that like slower is not worse. When it comes to these things, like I like the pace of Dark Souls 1.
Right.
It is slower. It would just take longer to get used to.
It's the acclimation period as opposed to being like an absolute good or bad,
Like it took a while to get used to Bloodborne's pace too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like if I think about starting Bloodborne, I was like, man, this is too quick for me. Like there was a long learning curve of that.
Yeah.
So they all kind of like, if I think about it in those terms, like they all kind of have this learning curve when they're different from one another. Yeah. It's a lot kinder.
Yeah.
The easiest learning curve was probably from Bloodborne to Dark Souls 3 because there's less of a difference there, and the kind of the friction points actually happen later, which in some ways is worse, right? Because it's like I feel like I'm already used to it, and then I start running into the fact that like, oh, these rats are stun locking me, but these are encounters that are built around like having a shield.
Yeah.
It feels like, or having a meaningful poise rather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of hard to tell. There's always going to be that acclimation point though. And I don't think that's I think it's important to separate that out from like other, just like a general perspective,
Yeah. It would be very strange to play an entry in this, in the series and then go back or, and then have the next one be easier.
Yeah. But it would be, it has to happen or I'm going to stop playing these fucking games.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what I mean. Like it would be very strange because Dark Souls 3 is harder than Bloodborne, is harder than Dark Souls 2, is harder than and I think the Demon Souls and Dark Souls are pretty equivalent actually.
Yeah. That was the kind of lateral move I wanted.
Yeah.
I just and then they do the next one and it is picks up right where the Ring City lets off. I will stop playing these games. Like
later.
I'm not saying that as like a threat or something, but it's like, I just like that's going to be too frustrating for me. There is a line, right? Like
to quote the Foo Fighters, I don't owe you anything.
Yeah. It's just like liking something doesn't mean infinitely liking it.
Right.
Forever. Like loving something doesn't mean unconditionally loving it.
It's not my fucking kid.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like it sometimes, but they've got to do that. And that's why I want them. That's why I so desperately do not want Bloodborne 2 and do not want another Souls-like. I want them to say like, okay, let's go back to a first person game or go back into a JRPG or another Armored Core or do something.
give me my third Echo Knight game or my fourth one. Damn it.
Totally. Like give me this, like go get off this for a second because you guys are in an arms race with yourself that can only end in ruin.
Yeah. What if they make a Frame Gride 2?
Oh man. Like, that's one of, I think that's one of those funny like names. Like whenever I see that on the big list of like Frame Gride, it's like not Culture Brain. What's that? Info frames or infogrames.
Infogrames.
Yeah.
Infogrames. Like those, infogrames. Just one of those weird, like hard to pronounce. Kind of clings off. But it's I hope that I do get that experience of moving to an easier one.
Yeah.
I really want that. And that's not exactly the answer that where the question was asked, but like that it would be the way it was different.
Yeah.
I think the answer to the question is yes, of course it would affect your playthrough, but in a way that is only good because it's unique.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of experiencing things is to have an experience with them.
Yep.
Do you want to who is this? Is this me or
this would be Randy.
Randy? Do you want to read Samuel Bear?
All right. Samuel Bear writes, Just wanted to share my favorite moment of emergent online gameplay in the Souls series. A couple of months ago, I finally got around to playing Scholar the First Sin. While I was clearing out the Dragon Shrine, I was invaded by the fashion police. As my character wears the Llewellyn set with the traveling merchant hat, I think he is very fashionable, and I stopped to be appraised. I was then backstabbed, as this was an invader impersonating the fashion police. This experience only solidified my love of Dark Souls 2. One of these days, I may actually beat those last 2 DLC areas.
We only talked a little bit about the kind of like goofy theme invading and stuff, which is at peak.
Yeah.
Like not only is PvP at peak in Dark Souls 2, which like it's kind of a shame for doing this retrospective, having none of us like caring too much about it.
Right.
But it's like that's this is the peak, this is the PvP scene, but it also, because of that, this is where like the goofy gimmick PvP stuff happens.
Yeah.
Like Fashion Police is a very famous Dark Souls 2 PvP video thing where if for people who are listening who don't know, like somebody invades, their name is the Fashion Police. They look at what you're wearing, they give you a gesture that's like approval or disapproval, and then drop equipment that would look better. Which is so good that this game allows for that kind of emergent goofiness.
Yeah.
It's very good.
And just like all kinds of, that nobody suspects the butterfly thing that I was referencing before, like weird butterfly, like jumps from across the map, drop attacks from like way further than you should be able to do it. Like weird things like that, like all the kind of comedy stuff was at its peak in this. There's a lot of good stuff for Dark Souls 3 as well, because Dark Souls 3 has like a way larger player base, but general PvP and that goofs hit its peak here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm always going to love it.
Yeah, the Dark Souls community being cute and good is always a thumbs up in my book.
Totally. It is absolutely a fave. Do we have anything else to say about that response?
No.
Thank you for sharing the story, Sam.
That's a good story.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and get us onto the discussion prompts. The first one from Chase Greenlee, who says, I hit my stride with Dark Souls at a weird time in my life. While I did have an initial try at it, which was stopped by the Capra Demon, I started listening to the show and playing the game when I first moved out to upstate New York for an internship. It is a beautiful part of the country, but incredibly remote. With the exception of taking my Xbox to the office to get a patch update, I didn't play any of Dark Souls or Demon Souls online for my first playthrough. People talk about the differences between the Soulsborne games, and for me, the biggest difference between the front and back halves of the series is the solitude of the early games. It very much feels like you versus the world, and non-hostile NPCs are to be cherished, a feeling I'll always associate with moving to a new city. I don't know if the later games actually have more NPCs, or if my return to a more populated area affected my perception, but the worlds do seem to have more of a crowd. Do you think real-life events have influenced your views of the games that you have played for the show, and how?
I mean, it's about associations. So for me, I bought the original Dark Souls the day that I found out that I got my job, like the day job that I still work. It's part-time, but like it was a really big deal. I had been waiting for so long, looking for a job for so long. Ended up being kind of the perfect fit, and to celebrate, I decided to spend money I didn't have yet and treat myself to this game that I was only kind of suspicious that I might like, because I had checked it out from. I basically rented it and decided, nah, it's not that great. So for me, like that first run, of Dark Souls is like tied up with that kind of sense of transition for me. I can't say specifically how it, might have affected my. My play, but yeah, that's kind of my story there.
Yeah. What about you, Randy?
Not to get too real or whatever, but like I was playing Dark Souls 2 on the PC, so it came out, I think that was like April or something, like late April or whatever, and it was slow going early on, but so like the majority of my playthrough was in like the summer of 2014, and that was the first anniversary of my mother's passing. And I was in a real bad way because of that. And I think that caused the themes of this game to like resonate a lot more with me, which is probably why they've stuck with me for so long. But like that summer is a thing I'll like how I felt during that summer, and returning, like going to Dark Souls as a beacon of hope in a dark time was a thing that like really solidified like both that game, but like the series in general, like as a place of comfort overall. And that I think that definitely affected my playthrough in that sense, but not necessarily like mechanically or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, sorry to hear that about a bunch of other.
Yeah, thank you.
We hear about that all the time on the show, like people who had like a very specific life experience that affected their playthrough. And like, the series has like been with me kind of through, hardships, right? For sure. I I tend to be more analytical about media, than emotional, like a lot of the time, for better or worse. So a lot of time, like I would think about these themes and feel like it's very resonant. And the way that kind of emotionally affects me has less to do with the time and more to be like, okay, I agree with this. I'm adding this to my identity. Like this is something that is valuable to me that is also valuable to this game.
Yeah.
So I'll look at one of these themes like, Dark Souls 1 or like Demon Souls. That's a big one where it's like, I don't remember going through a specific hard time, but I remember having like a really intense resonance with my conclusions I came to it because it was just like, okay, yep, this is part of me. I'm adding this to myself. Same thing with like the Dark Souls 2 ending, like the Aldia ending, like, yep, this is personally very meaningful to me. And of course, like it hits at good times. They're not specific like good times. I think that like a lot of my game to specific life misery memories happened when I was much younger than this, but it does help.
Yeah.
Like being able to kind of take those things in does help.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to point to a very specific one, but it's more about just kind of like, yeah, no, this is part of me now. Like I've taken this on. That's kind of the emotional reaction that I have.
Yeah. Dark Souls 2 is always going to be tied up with Gamergate in my mind because that, like it was the same year that really broke huge. Like that summer was kind of a miserable time.
Like that August or whatever.
Yeah. It was kind of a miserable time because criticism for us being way too positive about this particular game started coming through. Talk about kind of like being compromised. Like, what do you have to gain by being so easy on this? Along with just this huge activation of like really vocally active, shitty parts of the internet, alongside us also, making a conscious choice, I think, to include, our own views and reactions to that, and bring, more political angle to the shows. It's not entirely about that. We didn't make it entirely about that, despite the reviews you might have read. But like for some reason, like my relationship with Dark Souls 2 is tied up with that season and what was happening, politically online at that time.
Mm-hmm. It's weird that they are connected, and it's weird that it got connected specifically for us.
Yeah.
When I think back on it, it is ludicrous. The idea that somebody thinks like, oh, we were being nice to Dark Souls 2 because of some kind of ethical consideration. That's bonkers to me.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, wow. Yeah, that actually did happen though. Like some people said that.
Yeah.
Which is really something else, But yeah, like that I have that association as well.
Yeah.
Because it's in a weird way, and people get frustrated when we talk about that kind of stuff on the show, so I'll keep it brief. But like that was a turning point for our interaction with people online.
Yes.
For a couple of different reasons, and Dark Souls 2 got tied up into that. Like it was because of Dark Souls 2, it was also because of Gamergate political things.
Yeah.
So
right. I was just gonna say, like, these games take up so much of anyone's time. Like, it's such a huge chunk of your life that it's like bound to get like something's bound to stick. It's gonna Katamari some sort of emotion onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
It's in a context.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Steve Ritchie writes, who's your guys' favorite Dark Souls YouTuber besides Vati? I can't choose between Iron Pineapple or Young Maestro. Young, spelled Y-U-N-G. Watching somebody doing cosplay PvP and it working out always gives me hope that we won't always be getting smashed by dual-wielding Smashulons. Slashulons, rather. Sorry. Very important.
Yeah, get it right. There's a very different. Iron Pineapple's great. Like he's very funny. And he does a bunch of comedy stuff. Like earlier on, I was going to do a comedy and Dark Souls, like wanted to do a special about that, and realized like it would just be I could put together some interviews, but I didn't have anything to say other than just like Dark Souls is funny, huh? And decided against doing it. Also, the Dark Souls 3 season was longer and more taxing than we expected, so I didn't really want to extend it. But he was on my short list of people to contact about that because he's very funny. I don't think their voice comes up, so I don't know who that is. But yeah, they're very good. Got it. Who's the other guy? Next Level Curtain guy who does this series called Next Level Strats. That tend to be just kind of like a minute and a half long kind of like sketches. Like they're not really strategies for what's happening in the game. They always have some kind of weird thing. Like there's one, the first one I watched, it's written entirely from the perspective of like a guy who's trying to beat one of the Dark Souls 3 bosses while his wife is gone and he has to take care of his baby. So there's like a baby all the time, and he includes like all these like shifting, the baby to his other arm and things like that, like in the strats while showing what's happening on screen. And it's really clever.
Like sketch
he's
comedy.
very funny. Yeah, it's these little like kind of sketches, which is very cool.
Wow. That's
and then,
really cool.
It's very funny. Like you check him out. He's done other stuff as well. And then Richard's great.
Yeah.
I can't say enough nice things about Richard. He hasn't done a lot of stuff. He hasn't done anything for Dark Souls 2 as far as I know, but did a lot of Dark Souls 3 and a lot of Bloodborne things. And really, like, as far as kind of close up visual perspective,
yeah,
he's my favorite.
Yeah, like Bloodborne hit at like exactly the right time for the exact right person to who had the ambition to go about doing that interpretation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I used to watch a lot more. Like my YouTube subscriptions used to be like, I feel like probably like 50%, kind of Souls lore stars. But what kind of happened after, especially after Dark Souls 3 came out, not everyone believes this. I pretty much believe that there's not going to be like a smoking gun that fixes any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that what's there to be discovered has been discovered. And what we're seeing in the Dark Souls lore community is like, to be grim, like kind of the death throes.
Yeah.
And it's sad to watch, right? Like, yeah, I see these people who like, I know make their living or make part of their living from this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this in a judgy way, right? Like I'm not saying like, we had the foresight to get out and they didn't. Like, I totally get it.
Yeah,
I totally understand what they're doing.
This was always a side piece. Like we came into this pre-diversified.
Totally. And it sucks for them. I have sympathy for it, but it's affecting the content in a really interesting way. People are jumping ship to other franchises. People are like doing really stretchy kind of things, really. So like somebody who I like, and this is not me throwing shade, I'm just using them as an example, but Sana Deske, who does like a lot of cut content stuff and really cool cut content stuff, is releasing these videos that have like, it's a trickle. Like the videos come out, but they have like one thing in them, as opposed to doing like, here's 10 pieces of cool stuff we found. Like it's a trickle because, we have to ration.
Yeah.
Because the supply is cut off for now. People don't know whether there's going to be a new one. And even if if they do a new one and it's right off the heels of Ring City and it's like, you thought the Ring City was hard, wait until you play, Mecha Unite or whatever they want to call the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that happens and I don't want to play it, I really want it to happen for these other people.
Yeah.
Like I want Vadi to be able to keep making videos and kind of explaining this stuff. And I want, Sana Deske to like be able to keep doing this.
Right.
Like this cottage industry that's sprung up around the series is valuable and cool. And for the most part has been very like sweet and good to us.
Yes.
And I want the best for them.
Yeah. Hopefully the tide comes back in.
Yeah. Even if it ends up not being my tide.
Yeah.
I still want the tide to come back in for them.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. Sorry. I mean, I feel like I kind of monopolized that answer. I apologize.
That's fine.
No. Randy, do you have any pro follows?
Well, I'm not a big, YouTube citizen or whatever, but I want to give a shout out to, I believe their name is they go under Moonlight Butterfly. They do like kind of like narrative cuts of like the entire stories of these games. And it's like really cool. Like I enjoyed watching them, and it would probably be my first choice for someone who's like, if I wanted to show somebody like what those games are about without having to expose them to the game itself, it would be like the best way to do it, at least in my opinion. But like, yeah, I believe their username is Moonlight Butterfly, and they do like basically like the story of Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, and it's just like, a 4-hour, like 3-hour, like feature length thing made of both cutscenes and also like camera manipulation stuff.
Yeah. And
they'll make scenes like they'll take like dialogue that characters say and recontextualize it to like, show what's his name, Sigmire talking to his daughter and stuff. It's like It's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
These little story versions of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like cinematic.
Yeah. It basically just makes like feature-length versions of the narratives of these games, and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't do as much, never did as much YouTube following as Gary does. Most of the stuff was either preparing, for a guest to come on, understanding what they, kind of what their deal was, what kind of work they do, or if something was brought to our attention. I want to bring up two people, Tetramantis, on their kind of listicles of stuff you might not have noticed about Dark Souls stuff. The top 10 so-and-so about Souls is something that even Vati does, but I think Tetramantis does really good versions of that. Additionally, like I have no idea what their main.
I think that's Terramantis.
Terramantis? Oh yeah, Terramantis. There we go. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to verify. So
yeah.
Don't feel bad. I had to double check.
Yeah, I just
Tetramantis is my favorite barbershop quartet made of mantises.
Yep.
it's the for Zorak.
Yeah. Oh, beats still my heart.
Yeah.
I'm
all in for Zorak.
This is a person. This other one is a person who doesn't do an awful lot of like Souls stuff, but has made kind of something I think is really amazing. It's Erotic Fish Cake, who does some general gaming things, but they have a playlist where they've gone in and just recorded the ambient sounds from areas in Dark Souls 1. So if you just do a search for Dark Souls ambient sounds, you can just have that up and playing in your house.
That's fantastic.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, or playing while you work. Like, I'll admit, I've used some of those to kind of reconstruct the soundscape for the opening quotes.
Yeah. Those kind of I love those like very valuable services. Even the people who just go through and do all the dialogue. That's very, very valuable.
Yeah, the Skyrim ambience track on the soundtrack is the best track on that soundtrack.
Nice.
I also want to give a shout out to the How to Beat Dark Souls 2 bosses video.
Oh my God!
Damn it!
Yeah, Magma Mansion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just I mean,
we said our authority, the Royal Rat, over and over, and that's
we
what
did.
Right?
Yeah. Well, but just that, like, that's that boss's name.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes, authority. Oh, you mean the Royal Rat? Yeah.
Yes.
Authority, the Royal Rat. That YouTube channel is very interesting because it's like half those very funny parodies, and then half like pretty straight laced retrospectives that are like good, but not like as sublime as the like How to Beat the Bosses. There's a really good one for Shovel Knight as well.
Ooh.
Maybe they have two editors.
Yeah. I mean, but totally. But I think that's actually the case. I think there's two people working on the channel.
Yeah.
So I want to give a quick shout out to a couple people who have done kind of long form analyses of this. Matthew Matosis, who has done a Demon Souls, a Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2 one. Joseph Anderson, who has done a Dark Souls, done a bunch of these. These people who do these kind of long form things, and then H Bomber guy who's done one, and none of them are perfect, right? Like, so you look at Joseph Anderson, like doesn't care about the story of these games, like he just doesn't. So he just kind of doesn't include them, and there are things that are only good, but you can consider the context. And H Bomber guy's thing is not. It's like largely in response to Matthew Matosis's thing, which is not like I disagree with a lot of Matthew Matosis's thing. Like there's this whole thing about how if you have to not lock on, it's bad. It's like, well, that's how you get through some encounters, right? But all three of them are interesting. So if like your YouTube, if you want to watch something longer, they tend to be about an hour long. But they're really nice to have on in the background while you play something different or like clean the house or something like that. Like treat them like a podcast.
Yeah.
And all three of those are really good.
Yeah. H Bomber guy's a pro subscribe.
He's good at game stuff, but he's so much better at dunking on alt-right shitheads.
Yep.
It is very, very fun to watch him just like tear apart, any of these pieces of shit.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Randy, what does Paul say?
Paul writes, I have a friend that I think might like the Souls games, but he told me he kind of bounced off of them when he briefly played them a few years ago. I know you can't make somebody fall in love with a game, but what would be the best way to reintroduce them? Watch them play and give advice. Have them watch me play? Arrange some co-op? What's the best game to start with? Any specific suggestions? Hopefully it'll be fun for the both of us.
Well, just explain that a man on the internet has a theory that part of accepting souls is rejecting souls initially. Say that, hey, this is waiting dormant in your spine, and all it takes is, one little thing that'll push you over, and it'll be your favorite thing in the entire world. Just explain that.
There you go.
Say your friend Kole sent them.
The I think that if you don't do that, if you don't follow that advice, it's really important to kind of separate out souls from souls culture.
Yep.
To anybody,
Yes.
like there was that tweet that went around that I retweeted that like some people were taking, not getting the gist of, or it was like the shirt, the front of it was like, I didn't beat Dark Souls, because it was parroting a shirt that said I beat Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
And the back was this long paragraph where it's like, Dark Souls has a series of design problems that the community refuses to engage with due to, because of this kind of idea of machismo and that's like 100% true, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Right.
people, we talked about that in the Bloodborne episode. I think that's true even of the series, even though entries I love. Like I love Dark Souls. Like depending on the day you ask, is my favorite video game, the first one. It does have problems, and there's this weird way that talking about those problems or acknowledging they exist has become taboo.
Yep.
In the community. Like, no, you just have to get good. Like, and that's so reductive.
Yeah.
Like even if you don't like that because it's like macho and shitty, it doesn't help.
Right.
So out of those things you mentioned, Paul, like hang out, like make sure you explain that that's not real. It's not as hard as like it's being made out to be.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you need help. It doesn't matter if you need to summon. It doesn't matter if you have to cheese a boss. And then I think out of those things, like hanging out with them while they play. So kind of being there for hints, kind of watching and seeing like, where they might need, like actually, you know what, save up and get the heater shield in the Undead Parish. It'll make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
You can give those kind of like little hints that don't break the game. They're very useful. I think that would probably help.
Yeah. Randy, do you have any pro tips?
Yeah, I would, kind of just like, not only, along the same lines of like, disengage from the community, but also like, especially in the sense of like, if you are having trouble with anything, like do not hesitate to summon in people, like just engage with that system. Like it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, and depending on which game they're playing, like I would argue that some of the encounters are designed for that, to have two people in there, like to pull aggro and stuff.
Yeah.
So like
explain that system to him, because it's not there, out of the box.
Yeah. Explain that putting your sign down and getting summoned in to help someone with a boss is a no risk situation for you. It is just like free souls, and depending on the game you're playing, like you get humanity or whatever, like or your ember, like that is a great way to get souls and experience on bosses. Like, hey, like let someone summon you in, you kind of get like a free preview of the thing. Like that's totally okay and valid.
Yeah.
And if I can say something that the most cynical person in the world could say is cynical itself, but I don't mean it as such. Our like, and God, it costs money to do this. Our community is so good for this, and I'm not saying that as a brag. Like the Dark Souls people that we have, like specifically in our Slack channel, are the sweetest, most helpful people in the world. Where it's like 2 a.m. and you're like, I can't beat this boss, and someone will pop on and help you, and you can ask questions, and like people are not judgmental because we don't allow it, right? Like somebody's going to be a dick about Dark Souls, like don't get to post there, right? So like it is a good place to find people who are not a dick about Dark Souls, and like it costs money to join that community. It's part of our Patreon. That'd be a hard sell for your buddy, but like just letting you know that if you end up needing help, or if they get kind of into it. And like listening to Bonfireside Chat isn't a bad mood either. Like listening to the first couple episodes of any area can help. Like those basics episodes that we do, like we explain summoning and humanity in a way the game doesn't. If they decide they like that, like our community is actually extremely good for help.
Yes.
So take that with a grain of salt, because I understand we profit from that, but it is true.
Yeah. And I would mostly just be like stuff around that, like don't make it a chore. You can't force somebody to like something that they don't like. But try and frame it up as, a little bit of an act of generosity. Hey, this thing is important to me. I really think you would like it. Your friend, you know if that's going to be true. And set it up and say like, hey, let's give it another shot, but I'll drop it after this.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't push them either. That's a quick way to like resentment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Make it something you do together.
People telling me to play a game, like nothing gets my goat quicker than that.
Yeah, make an event about it. Do that thing the other readers said. Like how they go back and forth. Like that's a fine way to do it too.
That's a great way to do it, because they'll see you play and then they'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
If it's they'll tap into a little bit of that little kid brain that like watches your cousin play a game and you're like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I want to play.
And if if you're doing somebody else's Solar Shield run, it's kind of like playing horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just get a bucket of snacks or whatever. Make sure you wipe your hands before you use the controller.
Yeah, get yourself a buffalo bucket full of delicious buffalo wings,
Shrimp,
and just pass them on back. Yeah, just shrimps, white wine. Get all the grossest foods that you don't want on your controller.
Right.
Loose pimento cheese.
Ooh.
Yes.
Just,
yeah, it's like a champagne bottle in ice, but instead of a champagne bottle it's your controller, and instead of ice, it's shrimp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just lick it.
Dark Souls, yeah.
Then
and then the real Dark Souls begins here.
Yeah. Then you get good at eating so many shrimps. These shrimps will get good once we saute them in lemon and garlic. And then they will get good after we marinate them.
So dumb.
Who is next?
I believe it's you, Gary.
All right. Mitchell Stemple says, is there anything that you have pulled from these games or the series that has affected your personal philosophies? Or more broadly, is there any way that they've impacted your real life outside the podcast? Thanks for the great times I've had listening, and looking forward to seeing you on the other side of WAF 2.0 Dream Drop Distance. I forgot about Dream Drop Distance, so thank you for reminding me of that appendix, subtitle.
Yep. Oh my God, that's an actual thing. Fuck.
Dude. If you like, there could be like, if it was worth playing a Kingdom Hearts game, like Kingdom Hearts would be a great Abject Suffering, because it's like those games do a lot of things I think are pretty unforgivably dumb.
Yeah, no, I just
with a totally straight face.
I only have experience with the first one.
Yeah,
because that is such a dumb name.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah,
358 divided by 2 days.
Yeah.
Donald Duck is a wizard.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool in my book. I don't know.
like
2. It's like salty ass wizard duck.
So I mean, like I talked about this a little bit in Chase's answer, right? Like there are things that I've pulled from this kind of philosophically.
Yeah.
Like I do think that there are things that like I probably was aware of on some level, but I think that Dark Souls 1 at the very least like does have this element about being about like the more that I kind of get older, the more I think about it, as opposed to Demon Souls, where I think it's, kind of about maybe sometimes the world is not worth saving. I think Dark Souls 1 is about like, just because a gain is temporary, like it might still be worth doing. That whole reframing Artorias of the Abyss, like seeing that the Abyss is how nasty it is.
Yeah.
And that's not true for the entire series. Like it doesn't play in the grander cosmology of the series, because I think other games kind of make an argument that the Abyss is the natural order and is a way to go, specifically 3.
Right.
But it won like this idea that like, yeah, maybe if we kick the can down the road, we're going to get there anyway, but like there's real gains to be had. Like people will suffer less.
Right.
There's a little bit of that in there. And that's something that like I take to heart and comes up as like surprisingly relevant in terms of like politics.
Yes.
Today.
Yeah.
I think
it's remarkable how you've come around to a more optimistic read on that, because that was one of our first, not one of our first big fights, but like that was a major bone of contention in that season. It's
a way bigger one in Demon Souls.
Yeah.
Like I specifically remember the last episode of Demon Souls. Like I don't think that, because I'm way darker on Demon Souls than Dark Souls 1. I think Demon Souls does more of a job of showing that the world is not worth it.
Yeah.
Like it is a horror show left and right. Like there's a place where that's like dedicated to throwing babies in a swamp. Like that world is not worth saving.
Yeah.
It is very much like J horror all the way down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Demon Souls, you should not link the fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like humans are worthless. The world is worthless. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think it's more arguable in Souls.
Yeah.
How about you, Randy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, back going on the theme of Dark Souls 2 about, hope being this, this like ever present force, and driving people to, engage their, emotions and actualize them and all that. Like, it definitely has that sort of resonance for me. Like, it like I mentioned earlier, like it came out of a rough time in my life, and basically like coming to the conclusion of like this too will pass and all that, and it's like, just if you find yourself on a cliff face, just look for the nearest handhold, and like if you can do at least that, like you'll like that's one less thing, that is progress.
Yeah.
And like the philosophy is like to cherish the handhold, not necessarily the top of the cliff. Like spend like, not to like, look too forward to the future. Like look at like the gains you can make, look at like the blessings you do have, and don't get lost in, don't miss the forest for the trees and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a real big part of like scientifically what it means to be happy too, is that kind of gratitude piece.
Yeah.
And that kind of like figuring out what you have control of. A good person to talk about this with, and if people don't listen to this, is Twin Humanities, like talking to CJ.
Yes.
About Dark Souls 2.
Yes.
He is as emotionally affected by it as anyone, and has a lot to say on this topic.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say actually, like CJ is like not just about Dark Souls, but just like his like the same thing with Scott Benson too. I think like his like their takes on these games resonate a lot with my own.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that like, yeah, these games are about finding hope and looking like holding on to it or looking for it when you don't have it like in your immediate vicinity. It's all about like finding the next stone to step on.
Yeah.
And loving the stone.
Yeah.
So prior to getting into Souls, I had found mindfulness as a strategy for anxiety management,
Yes.
Because that's something I've dealt with, and just kind of like learning about like basic, just watch your breath. Like it's really simple. It doesn't have to have a lot of bullshit assigned to it. You don't have to take hours every day. Just here are some strategies and things, and like it's a joke, like joking about the cycle of samsara or whatever. Early on in the run of the show and early on in the network, but like that's very much where my head was at the time, and so going into Dark Souls and like having that kind of epiphany moment where I realized, oh, I just lost a whole bunch of I just lost a whole bunch of souls. Well, no sense being angry. Like that presence, or just like that, the mutability of everything. Understanding like getting this amazing example of that concept of the moments so strongly expressed in mechanics was like a huge moment for me. And so like it's something that I brought to it like from outside. However, it was definitely amplified by playing Dark Souls and managing my relationship to loss and attachment.
Yeah.
I think it's just another bullet point on the list of like why or how Dark Souls finds your weakness. Like it makes you confront those things about yourself in a very, very like real way. And yeah, like I learned a great deal of mindfulness over the past like 3 or 4 games, just learning to move on from like inconsequential things and learning which things are, important.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like I was going to say, it's kind of like a stoicism enforcement.
And I was going to say, like an emotional triage,
Yeah. Like it forces you to grapple with the, and I talked about this like a lot philosophically and like other shows on the network where we talk about our feelings more. But like, as much as I am not a religious person, that like the whole, the AA, grant me the, or I'm also not an alcoholic, grant me the wisdom to know the difference between, what I can control and what I can't.
Serenity prayer.
The Serenity prayer, which I think is one of the best pieces of wisdom, just period, that exist, right? Like and that's kind of what happens with this is it's, you get to that point, you lose everything. You can't do anything about that now. You have to move on. How you move on is what matters. It's not what to do. It's not what you did. It's what you can do now, because that's in the past. That's quarantined. It's gone. Move on.
It's how you manage anxiety and depression and things like that. It's 100%.
There's a lot to that, and a lot of it is wrapped up in Souls for sure.
Significant. Chris Iglesias writes, if you were playing the games for fun instead of for work, would you have been compelled to go through the DLCs after finishing the base games? Do you think the current DLC model for expansion content is a good fit for the Souls series?
It's a good question. It's hard to say because like only in the last game did I not like the DLCs.
Right. So if they keep on whiffing like that, it'll become I'd probably still buy it and try it, just to see, because, sometimes you can only believe your own eyes and your own hands,
Yeah.
But yeah, like I probably wouldn't have played through all of the Ring City, or I maybe wouldn't have done it as quickly as I did if I wasn't, if I didn't have the gun of a deadline pointed at me. But all the other DLC I think is, phenomenal. I think is a really good fit because, it is so expansive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the DLC model is actually very good if if you take the aggregate quality of the DLCs, or like you ignore the quality of them. That's not really the question. It's like how they're doing it.
Right.
They've generally expanded on and really helped with the main game and kind of recontextualized it in a good way. Again, accepting the Dark Souls 3 ones.
Right.
So I think that is a good model for it. Like give you the story, then give you something that kind of like makes you see the story in a new light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's funny, you give us, or you give me too much credit for like the show being the impetus to go and do things that are onerous. Like even the show was not going to be enough to make me go beat the twin pets in Frozenella and Lois.
Yeah.
Like I would get to them and I'm like, okay, I see this is some bullshit, I'm not actually gonna do this.
Yeah. And I ended up doing it the first time, but Dark Souls, again, Ring City, I didn't beat that dragon. It's the only Dark Souls boss I haven't beaten, and will remain so for eternity. So the show did not stop it. Did not stop that from happening.
Well, hey, you might get company if they release another game that is like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. How about, do you have, I mean, I guess you're not on the show, Randy, but do you feel the impetus to like play through in Souls, or generally like content that is kind of onerous? Do you feel the need to kind of push yourself through?
I would say more often than not, yes. I think and this goes back to like, learning to place value in the proper things. I think I sometimes value completionist, like being complete a little too high sometimes. But I definitely have like a breaking point. Like there are certain things where it's like, okay, I'm just not going to do that. That's okay. But I definitely do. I do.
You do kind of push yourself.
Yeah. Like I will sometimes get myself into a bad headspace sometimes, and like as soon as I can recognize that I have done that's usually when my breaking point is, because it's like, okay, no, this is not helpful.
Yeah,
this is not this is not additive for me, or like it's not fair to anybody involved.
Why are you still playing this? Because fuck this, that why.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah, and basically when my answer becomes that, it says, okay, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah. I'm running into that. Right now I'm playing Prey.
Oh yeah.
And it has this weapon, this glue gun, that allows you to kind of create blocks, more or less. Mm-hmm. And there are places that I feel like you're not meant to get to through these little jumping things, but you can. And I've been so stupidly, it's also very nonlinear. So I've been so stupidly like stubborn about making these like jumping puzzle things work just because I know it's possible, or fighting, there's two of these things that are very hard on their own at once. Like I'm probably supposed to come back, but what if I do X, Y, Z and use up all of my resources? Can I actually beat them? And the answer is always yes, but it takes a lot of tries. And like, I'm not complaining about it. It ends up being kind of heavenly, but like, it's very funny. It's the same kind of thing. Like you don't get
I'm sure I'm sure the designers would love, like they would love to hear that. Like I'm sure they hear that and go, oh yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
But how many elevator shafts have you climbed with that like glue basketball gun?
None yet, because I'm still very early on. I'm being like very slow paced and thorough.
Randy, what does Viginti say?
Viginti writes, the favorite child debates so often come down to which game in the series a person played first. So, imagining a situation wherein you were hit on the head by a large anvil, perhaps as part of a Jeremy Greer scheme, and lost all memory of the series, retaining just a vague idea that they were awesome, which game would you replay first? Would it be which would be the best introduction, and which would be the most special to a naive newcomer?
It's really hard to say because I only have my experience, playing Dark Souls before I played anything else, and that's by far, my favorite experience that I've had, because it was all new. I didn't know games could play that way.
Yeah.
And it was super important. So like, I guess I want that again.
Yeah.
And even looking back with at least a little bit of objectivity, like I still think that's my favorite one. I think it's the most successful at the most things. Mm-hmm. I think that the perfect healing and the the perfect world design is a 1-2 punch that I can't get away from.
Mhm.
You know, I think I can't argue with that. So I still want that for the first time. Yeah.
Just because of my tendencies, I would like to have everything wiped out and play demons first, just for chronology's sake.
Yeah.
I suppose. I suppose if I had the opportunity, I would probably just start from the beginning, just because of that fits better into the holes inside my brain. Like there's, that like arbitrary order makes more sense to me. It's like, oh, this is the way they were made, so I get to see like a sort of progression or whatever. But it's just, honestly, like, I'm assuming this is assuming that accessibility isn't an issue in terms of like access to the games.
Right.
Because
like, if a naive newcomer doesn't have a PS3, then like I wouldn't tell them like, no, you asshole, you got to go play Demon Souls first. Go get a PS3.
Right.
Like, but assuming accessibility isn't an issue, I would probably also just say, it's start at the beginning.
Yeah. Or wait 3 years for PS3 emulation to make it possible.
Yeah, which will be not too long from now.
Yeah. That would be nice.
Yeah, it's coming.
Who knows how the servers are going to work though?
Well, that's true.
You just need an enterprising, group of computer folk.
Yeah, just spoof it.
Yeah, spoof it. Just hack the net, overclock it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this me?
Yes, it is.
Eric Pleasance says, we're in the just fun, and these are fun questions, or depressing questions, depending. Yeah, exactly. I've been better. Like my back is literally trying to kill me. So, my back is trying to front stab me. Eric says, Dark Souls was a game I picked up on a whim, knowing full well that I typically play games for a while and then quit before finishing. I ended up beating the game and replaying it several times, pre-ordering Dark Souls 2, finishing that, and replaying it over and over. And finally, before diving into Bloodborne, I discovered Bonfireside Chat, and I'm so glad to be a part of this community as a result. Thank you for accompanying me through these games, and I look forward to walking through many more games with you in the future via WAF, integrity, and faithlessness. I added the applet.
Okay.
Yeah. This is not a question. This is just somebody taking. But we don't usually read these. But we are doing it for the Victory Lap season because we're saying goodbye.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks, Eric. Thank you for being a part of our community.
Yeah. Thank you for all your contributions.
Yeah, Eric's great. Huge help when we did for Watch Out Fireballs. We did Doom 2. Mm-hmm. Eric is a Doom scholar.
Yes.
And I don't say that lightly. Like he knows a lot about those games. Same thing with Team Fortress 2.
Oh my gosh, he was so helpful for that.
Yeah. Eric knows his shit. It was really appreciated.
Yeah.
To have that help.
Real young guy too. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, he's a baby.
Not calling him out, like not blowing up his spot. I just didn't realize he was young.
Yeah, it's okay. It's our audience tends to skew roughly around our age.
Right.
Or between our ages, or a little bit younger, but he's a little bit younger than that.
Yeah.
That's quite all right.
Edward writes, guys, it's so great that you have made it this far. I hope this feels like a true celebration. You foster an environment that made me return to the Souls series. I thought I would just breeze through Bonfireside Chat as a late adopter, filling in the blanks of Souls vicariously. Now I own everything related to the series post to Demons, including the rash of Souls-likes recently. Thank you for changing how I look at games, and thank you for giving us a community that stretches past our hobbies.
Well, thank you, Edward. Yeah. Sorry about this, Randy. This is just the part that's no questions. It's just
this is fine.
People being nice, and it's just I wish somebody had written and said something nice about you too, and then we they didn't know you were going to be on the show.
They can do that later on Twitter.com.
Oh, that's 100% true. Like you can Rivaldi22 at Rivaldi22
yes.
On Twitter.
You remembered.
I did. Thanks, Edward. It's very, very important to us that the community aspect of this has been very important, and people, it's managing a community like this has been not a job that I ever thought that I would, we would have, right? Mm-hmm. I think I can speak for Kole. That's not like something that we thought would be part of our life trajectories.
Right.
But the good has so far outweighed the bad. Like as much as there have been challenges and there have been kind of frustrations, it has been mostly very rewarding.
Agreed. Yeah. Gary, I would recommend you read Tim's. That way we don't have Randy praising
just
us.
Saying something nice about us.
Right. That somebody else wrote. Sorry, Randy. I just don't want to. That feels awkward.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll just sit here in silence and nod.
Okay. You can pretend like you're listening to the show at home.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. Yeah, that's what I've been doing so far. Yeah.
Finally, Tim says, I've met and gotten to know some really terrific people, and playing the games alongside the show has really enriched the experience in so many ways. It may sound cliche, but all of it helped me through a rough time in my life, dealing with the loss of someone close to me. So once again, thank you. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with next. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's we talked about this before, but that's like one of my favorite. There's like the pantheon of nice things to hear.
Mm-hmm.
When people say we've helped us through like a specifically rough time or helped them through a specifically rough time, that's very nice to hear. You know, it's surreal that we can have that kind of impact. And then I love it when people say, I work a job I hate, but I go in and I can go in and just listen, put in headphones and not be there.
Yeah.
I love hearing that because it's like, I've worked jobs I hate and, they suck.
Podcasts have helped me.
Yeah.
It's nice to help people too.
Yeah. I could say that both of those things with a degree of truth to them. Help me get through a job that I was at for a very long time, and I came to the podcast. After having heard about it for a very long time, I'd come to it in another kind of rough part of my life, and it really helped me going. And like I wrote my first response in after a couple of months over on the the Bloodborne DLC episode, and you guys read it, and it just like being like participating in that week after week, or bi-weekly or whatever however you want to call it. Like that was definitely a thing that kept me going in a lot of different ways, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, really, really happy to help.
Yes.
And and really like, and we say this at the end of all the episodes. It's really true. Like, thank you, like specifically for your support. Everybody who wrote in, who are able part of this, and you specifically, Randy, like, it means a lot, right? Like it's meaningful to do this stuff. We don't do it because of any financial reason, but that does make a big difference in whether we're able to, to do it. I'm not trying to turn this into a sales pitch halfway through. I feel halfway through I started feeling pretty like shilly, and I didn't mean to. I just mean that like I'm trying to say like I'm very touched by people's support. Like I appreciate that people are saying that we're there for them, but they've been here for us as well.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want that to be ignored. I guess is my point.
Yeah.
Like, we're here for each other. It's we're all a gathering of exiles.
Yes. Our own personal Majula.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, I think. And a nice note to end on. Randy, I already mentioned your Twitter handle. It's Vivaldi22 on Twitter, so people should definitely follow you on there.
That would be real sweet if people did that.
Yeah. If people want to follow us, Cole, what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is at Kole Ross. That is KoleRoss.
Yeah.
And Gary, what's your Twitter handle?
At Gary Buh, GaryBuh. Lots of politics and games.
Yeah.
On there.
Yeah, mine's mostly goofy shit. I apologize if I don't get back to you right away. Twitter is mostly a write-only medium for me. So unless a response comes at a time when I'm feeling interactive, it may end up falling through. It's not because I dislike you; it's just because of my relationship with social media.
Nothing wrong with that. Like I could stand to do a little bit more distance and stuff too, because it can quickly take over your life. Yeah. In a way, like I've had like things where it's just like, oh, like, nobody's being rude, but I'll say something and then like, a bunch of people will respond to it and it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
That's not a humble brag or anything. It's not, but it's just the kind of thing where it's like, well, at some point it's like, I can either engage in a variation of the same conversation with 10 different people, or I can go over here and pet roars and read a book. Right. Which one of these is going to make me less stressed, Right. That kind of thing happens. I try to get back to people, but it doesn't always happen.
It's the theme of Dark Souls 2.
It was exactly. I'm grabbing on. Where's your handhold? I was hoping he'd be right there because he would have meowed. But I think he's under the bed sleeping.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you do want to support us, we'll be next week. We'll be back next week with our episode about Demon Souls. Demon Souls. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I'm started revisiting it. I started actually playing that yesterday.
Oh, me too.
And and I love that game. So looking forward to it. Thank you again, Randy, for sticking around for this long recording session.
No problem. And, thanks for having me.
It's great. I hope it was fun.
It was.
Excellent. Good.
Great.
And and if you want to support us, you can hit us up at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv.
Yeah, I think that's it.
We're 4 hours in, which is about I've been trying to hide it, but I've been in pain this entire time because I've got a back problem
Yeah.
going on. I've forgotten how we end these shows.
And my stomach is killing me, and I desperately want that ginger tea that I am. Yeah.
God, I hope this isn't a thing where like once the show dies, we die.
Oh yeah, it's like a Charles Schultz kind of thing.
Sicker.
Yeah, I know.
That's why we're falling apart.
Hollow.
Yeah, we're going hollow like as the show ends, where it's just going to be the two of us. Like my back is going to fall off. I'm just going to be a front end limbs, and just
you'll be an inverse Rayman.
Yeah, and your stomach will fall. You'll be like Hank Cotton Hill, but with stomach instead of shins.
Right.
Just your nipples right at your hips. And and we'll tour us around in 2 bits of gander.
Yeah.
Walking in circles at the end of Undead Asylum, dragging your microphone behind you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the value we'll be able to provide is people will get sad when they see it. So like that's,
yes, there'll be a music swell.
Yeah. I'll carry around a little Bluetooth speaker.
Of course.
So.
So Gary, I think you asked them until next time. What should they do?
I did ask that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I'm gonna gaslight you, friend. I did ask that.
Okay. Just remember, there is no path. Umbasa.
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 And we all pray that we will have far more soon